All right, Mark, as usual, we're about ready to review our podcast that we just recorded. What's one interesting thing or something of note that came up for you?
Chris, I love numbers and I love stats. And if you guys watch towards the end, you'll see me drop some stat lines, percentages, numbers, all the good stuff. So make sure you watch to the end to be able to see that kind of stuff. What about you, Chris?
You made the comment, I'm just going to be honest. And you gave me an honest opinion. I know you to be honest in all situations. So I appreciate your honesty. And if you want to know what Mark was honest about and what statistics he dropped on me, stay tuned. Everybody, this is Chris Bongirno. Welcome to SoCo's most interesting podcast. I'm here again with my co-host, Mark Ditkof. Mark, how are you today, buddy?
Chris, today I think is probably the best day of my life.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that too, buddy, just because we're here and it's a day I woke up on, right? So
better than every day before.
Age, waking up every day is an accomplishment. Mark, we've been moving quite along here with our podcast. We've had a guest. We've had varied topics. I think we're sticking with the title, SoCo's most interesting podcast. Hopefully,
for today at least.
Right. For right now, our production quality is improving a little bit. You're looking at the editor here as well. So we're working on that. So if you guys have any comments on what we can do to improve topics or quality of production, something you'd like to see, please put that down in the comments. Mark, what are we talking about today? What's of importance that our fans and audience needs some information on?
Chris, I think today would be a good opportunity. We've been talking about this topic for a little while now, you and I off camera, but I think open houses is something that is, I don't want to call it controversial because that makes it probably get more weight than it actually has, but a little bit of an interesting topic where are they valuable? Are they not valuable? And who are they valuable for? Right? Because, buyers, sellers, listing agents, buyer agents, like what is the conversation to have there towards open houses? How to do them right, all those kind of things. So let's talk about that today.
Mark, let's start basic. What's an open house?
So an open house is when there is a home that is actively for sale and an agent, typically from the brokerage, whether it's the listing agent or another agent, holds it open, meaning it's unlocked, lights are on, and just anybody can walk through the property for a specific period of time, right? So maybe from 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturday, I'll be holding an open house at 123 Main Street. And that means you could plan to go, you could be happening to walk down the street and see it. Your agent could send you if you're working with a buyer's agent, but they don't have to attend because it's going to be open anyway. That's essentially what you're going to get with an open house.
And so that's different than when you take a buyer to a private showing. Is that correct?
Yeah, there could be 20 other people in the house at the same time at an open house. Again, your agent might not be the one that goes with you to an open house, even though we like to attend with our buyers, even if it happens to be during an open house time. But you don't have to be, right? You could be just walking your dog through the neighborhood and say, oh, there's an open house. Let me go walk through it.
And, as a lender, I've attended open houses with agents. I'll be going to one this weekend. And, one of the common things that happens is your neighbors come and walk by your house, right? So it's something to keep in mind as a seller is that unlike private showings, where you have an agent and their buyers typically coming to look at the home at a scheduled time, this is, like you said, pretty much an open to the public, come by and walk through this house, right?
That's exactly right. And so when I have those conversations with our seller clients, I'm very upfront with them. Look, there might be interested buyers that walk through here. I can almost guarantee there's going to be some neighbor that's always wondered what the inside of your house looks like or how you decorate your home. And They're going to come through and they have no interest in buying it. They just want to see it. And that's just what you're going to get.
or they're thinking about selling and they want to come
Yeah.
by and check out what's potentially the competition or how you set the home up. And sometimes where I've been there, the neighbors want to be supportive. They just
Yeah.
want to come by and support you with trying to sell your home. So what's the advantage, Mark, for a seller having an open house? We've kind of, talked a little bit. I don't want to say negative part of it, but something to consider is that the general public can come walking through the home you're probably still living in. What's the advantage for a seller? Why have an open house on a Saturday from 1 to 3?
So there's no doubt that the majority of people that walk through open houses don't buy the house they walk through, right? But that's also the same for showings, right? The majority of pre-approved, vetted buyers that walk through a scheduled private showing aren't going to buy the house either. And so to say that it's not worthwhile because there's a lot of looky-loos, that's just not a realistic expectation. However, I've sold, and I know multiple other agents have sold houses through open houses, right? The buyer happens to walk through. They might have gone there on purpose, or they might have just been randomly walking by, not even realizing that they were in the market to buy a house. But after finally walking through it, going, wow, I could see myself living here. Who's a lender that I can call so I can start this financing process? And we've done that. And so
Sure.
I tell my sellers that same thing. Yes, we'll have looky-loos, but I got to tell you, I've sold probably a dozen houses, if not more, through open houses. And we've sold that house itself. Exposure to, right? Just having the opportunity to get your house in front of more people. Maybe the person that walks through isn't the buyer, but maybe they've got a friend or family member, right? That says, hey, I just saw this house down the road. I know you've wanted to live in our neighborhood. It's for sale. It's beautiful. You should call your agent and schedule a showing. So
is there anything the seller has to do extra for an open house that compared to a private showing? What are their responsibilities, or what extra work do they have to do, or is it the same? Is what they're doing pretty much the same activity? It's just a different venue of how the home's going to be shown.
the only differences that come to play is typically an open house is going to last longer than a showing would, right? So I ask them to be out of the house for a longer period of time, typically about 2 hours. Some people do 3 or 4 hour open houses, but especially when I have an owner occupied listing, we like to try and keep it to 2 hours. And then the only other thing is if they have pets. A lot of times for showings, you can get away with probably just kenneling the dog or keeping the cat in a specific room or something like that. With an open house, we ask, if possible, that all pets be removed from the property along with the sellers. And that way, anybody walking through has the opportunity to truly see the whole property. So that's really the only differences.
How about if they have like an outdoor kennel for dogs or something like that? Are you comfortable with that? Or even so, you'd like them out of there during the open house?
Ideally, all pets are completely gone, because even if you have that outdoor kennel, somebody wants to walk through the backyard and you've got a dog sitting there barking at you, that's not the ideal circumstance, right?
Okay.
And for private showings, that's a better option too, but we also know that's not always an option, right? You can't always remove all the pets for every showing. An open house is typically scheduled about a week in advance. Can we find a place to make this happen? And we just do what we can, right? If it's not an option, then it's not an option. But if we can, that's the way to optimize it.
Do you treat open houses differently if it's a vacant home versus a home being lived in?
Absolutely. Yes. If it's a vacant home, I can go a little bit earlier. I can stay a little bit later. If I've got people coming in late, I'm more apt to still stay and work with them. If it's an occupied home and I know the people are coming back, somebody shows up 5 minutes beforehand. Sometimes I say, look, you've got 5 minutes. If you have any interest at all, let's go ahead and schedule another day to get you in here because the owners are coming home.
Sure.
Vacant homes, it just doesn't matter, right? Nobody's living there. And so if I'm there an hour late, 2 hours late, that's not affecting anybody negatively.
Okay. In terms of timing, do you do one open house typically during a listing agreement? Do you do multiple open houses? And how soon, if the home hits a market, let's say this Thursday of this week, when do you hold your first open house?
It's a good question, actually. So each house is different, right? How marketable and how interesting it is as an open house does depend on how often we're going to do them.
Does it also depend on the neighborhood, Mark? or is it really more
No,
specific to the house?
it's more specific to the house because there are buyers at every price point and there are buyers in every neighborhood. And so it really just depends when potentially you host it and then how often, right? I was actually talking to an agent in my office yesterday that has a beautiful listing. And he said, I can't hold open houses on it. And I said, well, it's vacant. Why can't you hold open houses? He goes, it's on a busy street. I said, he said he's hosted multiple on it and not a single person comes because the street that it's on is so busy, nobody can stop. And so that's one that we probably, you try maybe one or two, but if you're not getting success, it's really not worth anybody's time to make that happen. At the same time, you've got one that's in a very suburban neighborhood, lots of foot traffic, a sought after neighborhood. You might host one every single week, knowing that the right buyer could come along at any minute, right? Buyers that want to be in that neighborhood. So again, it's not neighborhood specific. It's going to be street specific, location specific. And then to follow up on your question. So if we go live on a Thursday, we don't have enough time to advertise for this upcoming weekend, in my opinion, to optimize that first open house, which is most generally going to be your most successful open house, right? The first time it comes to market, the first opportunity for people to see it. So if we did go live on a Thursday, we would probably host it the next weekend so that we had a full week of advertising. I typically want to know for my listings if an open house is going to be held that weekend by Monday, Tuesday at the latest. Okay. Right. Today's actually Wednesday when we're recording this. And I had somebody come to me this morning asking if I had any listings for open houses this weekend. And I told them no, because you don't have enough time to advertise it. And you're just going to waste your time and my listings time in being there without sufficient time to advertise.
Well, and then you've got to get the sellers out of there and so forth.
That's exactly right.
If you're asking people to leave their home, you want it to be effective. One last question kind of on the seller side, Mark, is do you bring up open houses with all of your sellers, or is it something they ask you even before you have a chance to discuss open houses? How does that fit in to you specifically in your marketing plan? And then how does it relate to the industry? Do you have any thoughts on, what do most agents discuss with their sellers with the open houses? Is it driven by the seller or driven by the agent typically?
So I can speak really clearly to what we do, obviously, and we bring it up at the listing consultation when we even sit down with you and start talking about if we're the right fit for you and how do we plan to market and sell your home. Open houses is on that list. And we actually go through in detail what we do to advertise for our open houses and what our typical traffic is. How long we host them, how many people we expect. Because if I can tell you, hey, I'm going to expect 10 people through this weekend and we only have 2 people through and I still did all my advertising, that tells us something about the house, right? Gotcha. If I had 40 people come through, that tells us something. And so that's why we want to have expectations that we can compare reality to it after that happens. But no, we talk about it first thing. Okay. Most agents in this market are open to the discussion of hosting open houses. Right? Not every agent wants to be the one hosting the open house, but most agents have people in their brokerage or on their team or whatever it is that are willing to do it. It's a good tool to sell the house, to market yourself as an agent, all those kind of things. And so it's really, that's why it's house specific, right? Again, if you're on a really busy street or it's just for whatever reason, not a good spot or not a good time to host an open house, that's the only time we would consider not doing it.
So we've really kind of talked about the whole seller marketing, so on and so forth. Talk a little bit about from a buyer standpoint. And really, I'm thinking buyers, you have somebody who wants to buy, doesn't know if they can buy, just kind of interested, all the way through the person that's, pre-approved with a lender or all cash buyer. And they're specifically interested in that neighborhood and may or may not be interested in that home, but they're there that day to look at that specific home. From a buyer's standpoint, why would you as an agent recommend somebody go to an open house versus going with a private showing with their agent?
There's a much lower obligation to open houses, right? When you walk in, a lot of times people, you don't have to you don't have to show your cards up front when you walk into an open house, right? You can say you're just walking through. You could say you're just perusing, right? There's not that obligation of what did you think? Are you ready to buy? Those, it's easier to avoid those kind of questions. So if you're not actively in the market, but you're kind of tempering the market, kind of seeing whether or not it's the right time for you, open houses are amazing, right? It's an opportunity for you to go through some houses, see what you get for the price, what that looks like, to see if it's the right time for you without, and I hate to even say that it would waste anybody's time otherwise, but you don't have to feel like you're wasting anybody's time when you don't know if you're a real buyer or not.
Right.
To sit down with an agent, get pre-approved, go through the buyer agency contract, go do private showings, have sellers leave their home when it's a private showing, when maybe you're not interested at all. An open house, right? They're already gone. You can just be kind of casual about it. You walk in, you take a look at the house, see if it's right for you, see what kind of make your must-haves list, right? Walk through your house and go, wow, this house has a 2-car garage. I didn't realize it, but I really need a 3-car garage, something like that, right? So that's kind of a cool opportunity for buyers that aren't outrageously, picky and not super ready to buy, but just kind of want to see what that's like. At the same time, if you're cash or you're pre-approved and you're ready to go, it's an opportunity as well. If you don't know what agent you want to use yet, and you just kind of want to do a little bit of due diligence on your own before you sign up with an agent, that's a way, one, to meet agents, because there's going to be typically a different agent at every open house you go to. And you can kind of vet them, see what they do, how many buyers they work with, what their knowledge is on the different neighborhoods, those things. And there's also, again, an opportunity for you to see houses, to see what you're needing, so that when you do finally sit down with an agent, you could tell them more specifically, this is what I need. I've already seen these houses and I'm not interested.
Yeah. And, that's interesting. You brought up interviewing the agent, because I was going to bring that up next. So one of the things that I thought of when we were discussing possibly doing this as a topic from a buyer is, so much today, my experience has been, one, as a buyer myself, and then working with clients and friends and family, is obviously they're using the internet for a lot of things. And even if there's a 3D tour, even if the photos are professionally done, it's hard to get the real character of a home, or a style of home. And so you're looking at homes in the $300,000 to $350,000 range, and you're like, I don't know if I want to buy in that price range. This gives you an opportunity to go stand in a home in that price range and see if that's a place you could imagine yourself living. Even if it's not the particular home, it makes those photographs real. And now you can say, you know what, we get to go higher in sales price, or maybe we feel comfortable. And it's the same thing with determining which real estate agent you want to work with. There's something to be said for reading reviews and past client experiences and so forth, but there's nothing like having a conversation. And rather than, going and meeting in office and a formal, introduction, open houses allow the buyer to walk in and, if you're not comfortable, you can, I'm already working with somebody, but then have a conversation with the agent as well. So I think it gives prospective buyers, regardless of where you are on that spectrum, an opportunity to both interview the home and an agent. Would you agree that that's kind of a useful process for the buyers?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I've hosted open houses where a buyer walks in, they admit the fact that they're not working with an agent and they're actively looking for an agent. And we just came to an agreement. You know what? I get what you're looking for. We're not a good fit personality wise or whatever it is, but it was really good talking with you. This is a great home if you want to buy it. Any of those kind of things. At the same time, I've met what I would consider really lifelong friends at this point through hosting an open house.
Wow.
They reached out, said, hey, I'd like you to be our agent as we go through the purchase process. And we go through, and that's what happens with a lot of our clients, is they become real friends. I mean, you spend so much time with them for 3 to 6 months, potentially even longer. And then, you don't see them again for a little while because you're not actively working, but you still stay in touch. Just like any, adults nowadays, you can never get together in person. And then a couple of years later, they call you to sell the house that you helped them buy, and kind of the process starts over again. But it's a cool opportunity to have that. You can, again, low obligation opportunity to meet people and see who's the right fit.
Mark, why do agents have lenders at open houses?
What was that again?
Why do real estate agents invite mortgage lenders like myself to attend open houses? Like, what's the advantage for the real estate agent of having me or another mortgage lender at their open house?
All right, I'm going to be super honest with you.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
Okay, there's one really important thing, and it's very true, is that if you do have an interested buyer, or even if they're not interested in the house, but they're interested in going through that purchase process, you've got somebody right here, right now saying, look, if you want to get pre-approved or see what your qualification is, here's Chris. Sit down with him. It'll take 15 minutes or so, fill out an application and see what your options are, right? And that's a great resource to have, somebody on hand in person, because a lot of people feel more comfortable and supposed to, call this random number that you hope is a real person on the other side, right? Also, just any generic questions, right? Maybe they're not ready to get pre-approved, but they're like, hey,
Yep.
I don't know. Here's kind of my situation. Do you think it's even worth applying and doing a credit check? And you kind of walk them through, well, here's the pros and cons. And here's some of the financing options that are available to the general public, whether or not it's available to you. We'd have to look into that. Those kind of questions, right? The other benefit to having a real estate agent bring on a lender to sit open houses with them is, Chris, you guys pay for some of this stuff, right? Open houses are incredibly inexpensive ways to market. That's why a lot of new agents like to host them, because for almost $0, you can put an open house together. You got to pay for flyers, pay for ads, but that can be limited, right? But then you bring in a partner like you, Chris, and now maybe you can cover the flyer costs. You can cover some of the ad costs. You can cover the giveaways or food or gift cards or whatever you offer at the open houses. And so that's a benefit too. It's kind of a silly benefit, but it is one. I mean, it's a real benefit, to especially a lot of these new agents that don't have the budget to put on the show that it could be. They bring in a partner that can help subsidize that cost.
And I wanted to talk about why I attend open houses with agents. So part of it is that supporting, real estate partners that either I've worked with in the past or I'm trying to develop relationships with. But also, as we've talked about together, is that we both see ourselves as advocates for home ownership in our local community. And like you described, answering general questions. If you're at an open house, and I would rank you in the top percentage of realtors that kind of understand interest rates and loan programs, so partly because we discuss it on a pretty regular basis. But you're not a subject matter expert, and I know you know that. And most agents are not at your level of understanding. So if you go to an open house as a buyer and you're walking around and you have some questions about financing, my recommendation is ask those questions if there's a lender there, of the lender. In my experience and the folks that I know here locally, no one's going to be pushy. No one's going to try to get you to do a loan application and fill out or do a credit report in order to get answers to your questions. What I'm there to do is support the real estate agent and really the seller in the community and answer questions, especially in this time of changing loan programs, facing interest rates we haven't seen for a while. So I really enjoy open houses because it, like you said, you meet people that you continue relationships with. Most of what I do as an open house is answer general questions. Probably 1 out of 5 or 6 open houses, I end up with a client out of those interactions. Sometimes they've been working with another lender. Most of the time they're not. And it really, in the last, since after COVID, when we didn't do open houses, I've had 3 customers that I've met at open houses, and they've bought the homes that they went to the open house. So it does happen. It's really kind of cool to meet the customer there and then have them buy the house. That's pretty exciting to see. So, Mark, what have we left out, or what's some things either on the buyer or the seller side or the agent side or the lender side that we haven't talked about today?
Well, it's interesting. So the benefits that we haven't talked about are for the actual agents, right? The buyer agent or the listing agent or the host agent, right? Because those could be 3 different people right there.
Sure.
What benefits do they have? And so as a listing agent, which is primarily what I work with overall, I a lot of the times allow other newer agents to host my listings as open houses. I can't host all of our listings open every single weekend, right? It's just not realistic.
Right.
I don't think that's where my biggest value is at this point, is sitting in an open house for 2 or 3 hours. I could be better off marketing that house in other ways. And so we encourage newer agents a lot of time because it is low cost and it's an opportunity to get your name out there. And I always tell people too, it's more eyes on the property, right? The more eyes you can get on the property, the more likely it's going to sell quickly.
Right.
And so,
and a lot of times those newer agents don't have listings.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. They don't have ones they
That's
can.
part of it.
That's exactly right. And so and I always try and rotate who it is. I'm not always having the same agents. It's not always people from our team, right? Sometimes it's from our brokerage and things like that, that they are the ones that are hosting the open houses again to get more eyes on it. Here's some interesting stats. I actually looked this up from 2022. Okay. Cause that's what the National Association of Realtors has for their stat line right now. I thought it was kind of interesting. So they interviewed the buyers that bought homes in 2022. And the very first thing they did when they started the home search process, Chris, can you guess what that would be? If you say, hey, today I think I'm going to buy a home, what's the first thing they do?
Look at interest rates. No, they went to an open house.
No, they went online, right? They looked at a mobile app, or they went to Zillow, or they went to a real estate website, whatever it is, right?
That makes sense.
Only 2% of buyers admitted that the very first thing they did was go to an open house. And again, I don't think it's they thought, hey, I want to buy a house. Oh, there's an open house. It's probably one of those people that were walking down the street. They said, oh, my neighbor's house is open, or that house is open. I'll just go take a look at it. And they go, wow, I think I actually want to buy a house, right? That's only 2%, right? And so it's like, well, why as a host agent would I want to host open houses? Only 2% of all the buyers from 2022, that was their first step. But here's the stat that I think is kind of cool. The percent of all buyers that went to an open house at all before they bought a house, 41%.
Okay.
Right? That's 2 out of every 5 buyers that purchased a home in 2022 went to an open house. And I think it makes a lot of sense that the very first thing people do isn't, I'm going to go to an open house. It's, I'm going to look online. I'm going to call a friend about it. I'm going to do something else first.
Right.
But maybe they start looking online, and that's where they see that the open house is planned. Right? Because a lot of the other websites, they syndicate when the open houses are occurring. And so they look online, they go, oh, there's an open house. Now it's not my first thing I've done, but now I'm going to go to that open house. And so if you're wondering, do open houses work, right? As a host agent, you could absolutely say 2 out of every 5 buyers from 2022 went to an open house. Now, some of those would have been represented already. Some of those, right, they're not perfect buyers for you. But at the end of the day, that's a huge pool of people that you say, I'm too good for open houses. I don't want to host one. It doesn't work. You're leaving 41% of buyers that you're probably not going to meet now unless you happen to meet them in another way. It's a really easy way to get your name in front of it. So I encourage all new agents, especially, but all agents should be hosting open houses on as many listings as you can. When I started the business, I hosted 3 or 4 a weekend at times. I do 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday, or 3 Saturday, 1 Sunday, just to get my name out there. And it works. So lots of houses through open houses. I would encourage people to do that.
One last question, Mark, that I've got for you. It just came to my mind. What do you recommend for in your personal practice? What do you do? A 2-hour open house, 4-hour open house? I know more than 20 years ago when I first got in the business, I had real estate agents that would do like a 4-hour open house. From like 12 to 4 or 1 to 5. My experience recently has been more like 2 or 3 hour windows. Do you think that's pretty common?
Yeah, there are still agents that do 4-hour open houses. And here's what I say to that. If somebody's legitimately interested in attending that open house, right, because only 2% of buyers, the first thing they did was go to an open house. And those are the ones you might lose out on, the random ones. But if somebody's legitimately interested in attending, they can come in a 2-hour window. And if they really, really can't, there's a good chance they're not going to be able to make your 4-hour window either.
Right.
And so you're just kind of wasting your own time. I've seen it. So we used to do 3 and 4 hour open houses, and we'd have, say, 20 people come through, right? Once we shrunk that down to a 2-hour open house, we did not see a consistent drop off of attendees. All we saw is that there was more people coming in that shorter amount of time, or same amount of people in that short, right? It was a denser population in the house at any particular time. Saved me time, saved my sellers time. All the people that wanted to see it still typically got the opportunity to see it. That's what I encourage, and that's why I host 2-hour open houses.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for answering that, because I wasn't thinking about that question when we started, but it came up in our discussion. Mark, great information today. I know it was a little heavy on you providing information. Usually it's kind of a even back and forth between us, but we're going to cover topics where one of us is more of a, the subject matter expert than the other. And same thing when we have guests, one of us may relate more to the guest. But I think that's what makes this the most interesting podcast.
The most interesting
in Southern Colorado is just because we're about doing what's right for our people. We're out of time, my friend. It's
Bummer.
good seeing you again. It was a great topic. I didn't know that we would have 30 minutes worth of information to cover, but we certainly did.
Just about.
Thank you for providing all that info.
Cool. Awesome, Chris. Well, Chris, if somebody wants to find you, where do they go?
The easiest way, Mark, is Chris Bongirno at loandepot.com for email, but you can also just search Chris Bongirno. There are links down below in the comment section where you can reach me there.
Awesome. And if you guys, if they want to find me, just look up Onyx Home Group on all major social media platforms. You can DM us. We do respond to all of our direct messages, and we try and get back as soon as possible. Again, that's Onyx Home Group on all your social media platforms. And they've got this on YouTube. You can just comment in the comments here or message us through here, right? Yeah. I think that's an option.
Absolutely. Yeah. We leave the comments open. We don't have thin skin. We will read them all and likely respond to them all. Good
Awesome.
or bad. Ditkof, spell Onyx for the folks that don't know how to spell Onyx.
Yeah, it's not spelled like the Pokemon. It's spelled like the rock. Onyx. The Pokemon's got an I instead. So it's not, I should have done that, but I didn't. So
no, that's okay. It's down in the comments if you need any help with that. All right, Mark.
It was a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks again. And we'll see y'all next time on SoCo's Most Interesting Podcast.